So my question to you is, are you living in your life right now? Are you living more from the head or from the heart? The head, the mind, the ego, has its own programming, right? That's always trying to pull you down into it. The mind is always trying to capture your attention, and it works on autopilot.
The moment your conscious mind takes off into a thought, it lets go of the wheel, the autopilot takes over. It turns out this is very negative.
Forget all other spiritual practices for a while. Sweep that away from your mind and make this your one practice. Okay, so we're here in 4D University for one overarching reason, right? Which is to graduate to fourth density. And so my only purpose here, as far as I see it, is to do everything I can to facilitate your understanding, your learning, and your growth into fourth density consciousness. And so really, like, that consists of one singular path, which is the path of the heart, the path of love. And that is what the fourth density is, right? The fourth density is the density of love and understanding from the heart chakra, where a new dimension of awareness opens up to us, where the old pattern of the dividing mind, third density consciousness, ego consciousness, which always wants to separate us from our experience and from what is arising in this moment, we leave that way of being behind, and we begin entering a new dimension of being, which is the way of the heart, or heart-based consciousness. And so there's a marked difference between a third density being and a fourth density being in terms of, the quality of consciousness they live from. And so our service to this planet is always going to be best served by far by you yourself getting into the heart and living from the heart and abiding from the heart. Because as you drop your sense of self from the mind, the egoic mind, and into the heart center, the space of pure being, the I am, as you live more and more from here, you begin to emit a powerful frequency from your aura, which is the green ray energy of love. And as we talk about in the 4DU Ascension, Student Ascension curriculum, every energy center is its own energy body, right? So we have the red ray aura, and then a little bit farther stretching is the orange ray aura, a little bit farther stretching is the yellow ray aura, and then even farther stretching than that is the green ray aura. And in fact, the green ray has 5 times the amount of energy available in it than the yellow ray does by itself. So we're entering a much higher energy level to live from. But what that actually looks like is a bit counterintuitive, because you wouldn't necessarily look at someone who's living from the heart. You wouldn't necessarily look at a fourth density being who's very still inside and very much has no motive for or agenda for the moment, just present, alert, radiating love, looking to be of service wherever needed, nothing to prove to anyone, just that easeful being. You would not look at someone like that and think necessarily, wow, they've got a lot more available energy in their consciousness than I do. It looks to the mind, to the dividing mind, like they have less energy, like they're much more calm, they're much more tranquil. It's a lower energy state when you're in the heart. And it's just, there's the paradox of love, is that when we live from love, love is a much higher frequency than the solar plexus chakra, the personal will, the egoic consciousness. It's a much higher frequency than that. But the higher our frequency rises, the more we're able to be grounded in the reality and in the present moment. It's actually when we don't have enough available energy that it's difficult to remain in reality. To remain fully grounded in reality, seeing reality, responding to reality, requires a lot of energy. Like, you need to have a high octane nervous system to compute all of that data and harmonize it in a cohesive, intelligent, grounded way. That's actually a lot more energy, but it shows up like a calmer energy. Can you see that? So that's the fourth density being. That's heart-based consciousness, is that when you're living from the heart versus the head, you're not thinking about what to do. You're not scrambling. You're not predicting. You're not analyzing, which is what the ego mind's always engaged in. You know, most people wake up and within 30 seconds of being awake, the mind is spinning its wheels and rushing off to, what do I have to do today? Okay, I need to do this and that. So this is what I'm going to do. I'll have my coffee and then I'll do this. And you're already off to the races. And so, I mean, maybe the best practice for living from the heart is to spend your morning, whether you spend your meditation session or whether you even just take a few moments of a few conscious breaths, anchor your awareness in the heart and say, love, please empower me today to live from my heart. Love, abide in my awareness today, all through the day. Let me forget all things except God's love today, as A Course in Miracles would say. And like just grounding yourself in the heart before you get off to the mental inertia of what to do, what to do, what to do. We're trying to live from being now rather than doing. And we're going to get to the way that those doing and being actually become one. But I want to really focus in today on this idea of these two paths, the path of third density spiritual practice, which I would call self-improvement, versus fourth density spiritual practice, which I would call simply devotion. So my question to you is, and I want you to think about this, really meditate on this question before you come up with your answer. Are you living in your life right now? Are you living more from the head or from the heart? There's no right answer, but like, where are you more often, right? Not that you're never in the heart, you're only in the head. No one on this call is always in the head and never in the heart. Most of you are in the heart often, right? But are you in the heart more often than the head? Very good. So a lot of honesty here. Unless you're very, very advanced on the spiritual path in that way, the answer probably should be head. And why is that? Because the head, the mind, the ego, has its own programming, right? That's always trying to pull you down into it. The mind is always trying to capture your attention, and it works on autopilot, right? The head and the heart, third to versus fourth density, are two different thought systems. The thought system of the head is the thought system of separation, judgment, dividing mind, duality, fear, separation. The thought system of the heart is the thought system of unity. So this is why we have to practice devotion. This is why devotion won't just come to you. This is why heart-based consciousness won't just come to you because you're attending these calls, or because you read lots of books about devotion, or whatever. It will come by no other means other than you being devoted to it, other than you practicing it. The path to fourth density is through devotion to God. And I really want to help you see why this is, and like settle this case in a sense in your mind, so that you will be fully convinced that the best use of your time all day, every day, and the only spiritual practice you need. Let me repeat. The only spiritual practice you need is devotion to God. And you're going to see why after our talk today. The ego is automatically pulling your attention towards it, right? This is the inertia we talked about when you wake up. You wake up, the working mind in about 30 seconds is already off to working. So you've got to diligently be mindful of that and say, no, we're not going to rush off into doership. We're going to spend a few moments connecting to the presence. We're going to spend a few moments remembering love. You just connect to the heart. Oh, that's right. God's love is omnipresent, already perfect, already complete. God's love already surrounds me today. It already surrounds everything. God's love is alive and available in every moment. God, please allow me to see your love in every moment today. Please, God, use me today to be an extension of your love, to glorify you by demonstrating your love. And you just spend a few moments just activating love in your heart. That will totally change your day, I promise you. You'll start to notice these shifts happening, where now there's a new kind of gravity beginning to develop in your consciousness that's pulling your attention towards it, just like the mind. But guess what? The gravity of the heart, the gravity of love, is much more powerful than the gravity of ego consciousness is. This only feels powerful and like captivating to our attention because we haven't fully realized, experienced, and tasted the immense bliss and joy and love and happiness that's available in the heart. And when you begin to taste it, it's a fever you can't sweat out. It's like Cupid's arrow, right? Getting struck by Cupid's arrow, that famous story from Greek mythology, makes you fall in love with the first person you see or whatever. It's like that when you get encountered by love or swallowed by love. It's so much more fulfilling than anything the ego's kingdom ever tried to promise you. That you run towards that new kingdom, the kingdom of love, with never thinking to look back again at the old ego's kingdom you're leaving, right? You're so fully convinced that it's what you're looking for, that it's a better thought system, a better reality. And so the gravity of love begins to pull you into it, just like the mind does, if you begin practicing devotion. And so here's the conundrum of practicing devotion is that it's most difficult to do this practice at the beginning. When you first begin practicing devotion to God, and I'm going to actually say devotion to love for the remainder of this call, because sometimes our idea of God gets in the way of what we're saying. We have different labels about God, maybe some religious conditioning. So I know what I mean when I say devotion to God, but I don't know what you hear when you hear that word, right? So a much less ambiguous word is love, and God is love, right? So to be devoted to God is to be devoted to love. But if I say devotion to God, sometimes it will provoke ideas in our mind of devote myself to a deity which is outside of me, that I need to talk to and ask help from. And you're still kind of falling back to that path of self-improvement again, in the head. The devotion is not a path of self-improvement. Devotion is not a path of self-improvement. In fact, self-improvement is not even on your radar when you're practicing devotion. Connecting to what is here now is your only motivation. So the difficulty in this practice, you guys, is that when you first begin practicing the remembrance of love, devotion to love, you're doing the things we talk about on these calls, right? You're attempting to engage in loving relationship with everything. You're attempting to go into every moment of your life all throughout your day, from the simplest things to the most intense things in your life. You're going in with one singular intention. Love, use me. Love, show me how I am to extend you in this moment. Love, show me where my service is required in this moment. How can I bring more love to this moment? As Ra says in the Law of One, the moment contains love. And it's the job of the spiritual aspirant to tune into that love and become aware of it. So in the beginning, it's the most difficult to shift your allegiance, the allegiance of your attention, from the mind into the heart. The mind will keep trying to pull your attention back up to it, and it will try even harder actually once it sees that you're anchoring your attention more and more into the heart. And so, I'll be honest about that aspect as well, that you should expect or be aware of, is that when you do start practicing devotion, because it is the most potent spiritual practice, especially for ego dissolution, the ego may throw a big fit and really, really try its best to fight you out of the heart and start bringing up all the shit, right? All the self-criticism, all the self-devaluation, all the self-doubt, all of the guilt and the judgments from my past. those things may start coming up a lot. And you'll start to feel thoughts arising in your mind like, who are you to be a servant of love? You've barely been loving at all in your life. You're not fit to be a servant of love. You're not fit to be a devotee of love. Look at all these bad emotions you still have inside. So very much expect ego to do that, because that's the only thing it can do, right? It needs your attention. So it needs to feed you juicy, tantalizing thoughts that it's pretty sure you're going to bite on and grab a hold of and think about and think about and think about. So the path of devotion has to be the singular intention to be aware of love's presence. And that's not really a thought, right? Being aware of love's presence isn't something you're thinking about. It's a deep tuning into self, right? It's a deep grounding in the present moment, or just simply presence, and remembering God's love, remembering that love is the reason you exist, that love is who you are, love is all that you want, period. Love is the only desire that you really, really have. Beneath all the distractions, beneath all the outcomes, beneath all the objects you're chasing, the romance, the fame, the fortune, beneath all those transient things you chase, love, the experience of love, connecting to love is the underlying desire. So when you remember that, you come into the heart space with a very powerful awareness. And that awareness is, what I seek is already within. There's nothing to improve. There's no one to improve. There's nothing to do other than to stay in reality. And reality is love. Reality is oneness. Reality is unity. Only the heart really knows reality. So in the beginning, you're going to need a more concerted, strong effort to practice devotion to love. Think about the analogy of a beach ball. When you put a beach ball on the water, it sits kind of at the top of the water, right? And that's, let's say the beach ball represents the mind. And the mind can float on top of the water. The water represents the ocean of the heart, the ocean of being. But as soon as you start to try to pull that ball under the water, there's a inertia that wants to go back up, right? A buoyancy that tries to go back up. So it's like the harder you pull the ball into the water, the harder the ball tries to go back up. And that's very much what it feels like when we start practicing devotion, when we start practicing living from the heart, devoting to love. Love is my only motive, is that the mind fights against you even harder. And so you need a very strong effort and discipline at the beginning. And so this is why years ago I did the Remember I Am series, because the idea of that series was like, let's just get introduced to this practice of remembering the I am. I am is pure being. When you connect to I am, it should feel like love if you're really connecting to it. I am is love. That's the nature of I am. And so if you remember the Remember I Am series, it was set an alarm on your phone for an hour, every single hour on the hour, and the caption says, Remember I Am. So every hour your phone goes off, remember I am. Okay, let me take a moment and connect to the sense of I am. And that was the practice. And it's like, okay, that's simple, but give me like a more cutting edge trick, you know? Give me a more cutting edge practice, Aaron. Just remembering I am seems a little too simple for me. I'm looking for something more advanced. And here's what's funny, guys, is that the most advanced practice there is the ability to do the simple thing over and over, persistently, consistently, unrelentingly. Meaning the one who really gains the most progress on their spiritual development is the one who practices the simplest things like kindness, or humility or patience, and just being vigilant to that practice every day, moment by moment, correcting unloving thoughts in your mind. Whatever way you distill the spiritual path to, we distill it here to love, living from the heart, then just make that your one practice and be all in. Be all in to an extent you've never even been all in before. go to the next level of devotion to that practice. Meaning, can it be your magnificent obsession? Can you be as addicted to remembering love as a drug addict is looking for their next high? It's all they're thinking about, right? All day long, they're waiting for the next high. We kind of have to be like that with love, with our true nature. We kind of have to be completely obsessed with it. We kind of have to become addicted to it, because the mind is addicted to grabbing your attention and putting it onto objects and separateness. So you've got to be equally or more addicted to anchoring yourself in the heart, to remembering love. And so it's like that beach ball analogy, right? The more you try, the harder it resists. But eventually, what we're trying to do is submerge the mind into the space of the heart and make it live from there. Force the mind to live from the heart. Because when we do that, the mind doesn't know its own best interest, right? The mind will never of its own accord come to the conclusion that living from love is the best way of being, right? The mind will never find that out on its own. It has to be forced to see that. It has to be convinced. But nevertheless, if you make the mind rest in the heart over and over and over, and whenever the mind tries to make this moment about something other than love, oh, are they approving of me? Do they accept me right now? Maybe I should try harder to get their approval. You go, whoa, 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 whoa. I'm just here for love. That's it. Sorry, mind. We have one goal here. How can I be of service? How can I extend love? And is looking for approval extending love? No. And so there's this kind of tastelessness in it for you. You go, ooh, gross. I don't want to get attention. That's very selfish. I want to give my attention to others. I want to give that love. When you make the mind do that, the spiritual ego, literally becomes convinced, slowly but surely, that this is a better way of being. So again, third density consciousness is the path of self-improvement. All of our spiritual practices become focused on, how do I improve myself today? How do I become a little closer to enlightenment today? I need to improve my character. I need to cultivate more inner stillness in my mind. I need to meditate longer. I need to pray harder. I need to try to help more people. And it's like everything is seen from that one lens of self-improvement. So self-improvement is inherently preoccupied with techniques to be practiced and disciplines to be kept. But the path of devotion, fourth density consciousness, is preoccupied with the awareness of love. And that's it. And everything else just flows downstream of that awareness of love. Meaning if I just keep my awareness, my attention, my intention on love, then the character improvements happen. The thought corrections happen because I notice those unloving thoughts in my mind. I'm not thinking of it as, I need to improve myself by requalifying this thought. I'm thinking of it as, ooh, there's an obstacle to love. Let me correct that obstacle to love. Everything's about love now, which is already here, already perfect, already complete, can't be improved. So you're not really on a path in that sense. When you're living from the heart, you don't feel like you're on a path to get somewhere. Does that make sense? In third density spiritual practices, you very much feel like a separate self who's on a journey to improve itself through all these practices. Kundalini yoga, Kriya yoga, everything is seen from, I got to improve myself. I'm not there yet type of thing. But as we move more and more into fourth density consciousness, see, like you never win from that point of view. You start to see that, right? You can't win from the path of self-improvement. Now, there is merit to it. It's totally valid for someone to begin their spiritual path and say, okay, gosh, I got to start meditating. I got to start practicing mindfulness. I got to start being more still. And everything is a practice to them. And that's very good, right? The path of self-improvement can definitely prepare you for devotion and does prepare you for devotion. In fact, this was what Ramana Maharshi did with his disciples, was he would try to teach the path of self-inquiry or self-attention. He would just say, hey, this is the only practice you guys need. Just keep attention on the sense of I. And they're like, okay, Ramana, but how to do it? And he's like, okay, so practice japa, meditate. He would give them all these practices because he could see that they needed that preliminary work. And so we do need that preliminary work, and all of us do. Almost nobody is ripe enough to just have a spiritual awakening and immediately practice devotion, and that's it. So we're tilling the ground a bit on the path of self-improvement. It's valid, it serves its purpose, but y'all wouldn't be in fourth density university if you didn't want to go into fourth density, right? And so how do we do that? Is we have to at some point abandon the idea that we need to improve ourselves. And we need to more and more begin accepting, I'm already perfect. As one of our mantras here, I am already a perfect being in heaven, here and now. So let me just be in heaven. Isn't that a better way? The heart's way is better. It just is. The heart's way is superior. Let me just be in the heaven that I already am. Let me just be the perfect being that I already am. And where do we access that perfect being? Where do we go to access the heaven that's already here? There's one access point. Yeah? There's one access point, which is the heart. The heart is I am. The heart is pure being. So if the goal of the spiritual journey is to transcend our sense of separateness, or to transcend the separate self, then really all spiritual practices, other than abiding as the perfect self, other than abiding as love, all other practices must perpetuate the separate self. Can you see that? Because all other practices are giving the separate self a task to do to improve itself, which is a paradox, because the self that wants to improve itself is the self that needs the improving. It's the ego structure, right? It's the who you think you are. It's the wrong identity. It's the false identity that wants to be improved. Love doesn't want to be improved. Love doesn't know that concept of improving something. So if you only practice self-improvement, or if self-improvement is the only attitude that you bring to every practice, then you'll be stuck living in the head. And that was our opening question. Are you living more from your head or from your heart right now? And if you said head, which most of you did, then this is your answer. Stop practicing self-improvement. It's not that I'm saying abandon any of your spiritual practices. I'm not saying stop meditating. I'm not saying stop practicing thought correction. I'm not saying any of that. I'm saying do it all with a completely different reference frame, with a new attitude, the way of the heart, the way of love. I'm already perfect. I'm already complete as love itself. I'm just here to remove all obstacles from that love from shining forth through me unhindered. The goal of the spiritual path, the goal of Christ consciousness, is to be the most perfect reflection of pure love, as Jesus was. To get to the point where the higher self emerges from you completely during your human incarnation, right? To remove every obstacle to love's expression and awareness in you and through you is the only goal of the spiritual path. So how else could you really accomplish that goal unless you're just practicing living from the heart? Every skill has to be practiced. So if you're only practicing improving yourself so that one day you can finally live from the heart, that's not a winning attitude, is it? There's still separateness in your viewpoint there. If you only live from that place, the ego can make sure that you always feel like you don't quite measure up to your own standard. You know what I mean? The disciplining of the separate self can go on and on and on forever. The ego can always imply that you're not measuring up. I've learned this the hard way from grappling with this inner voice in myself. No matter how much progression, no matter how much progress I see in myself, there's always a voice saying, man, you're sure far from the goal. And I've learned to just notice that voice as the improver, the fixer, the self-enhancer, the ego. It's just trying to keep me on this sense of being separate from the goal of love. That I'm not quite there yet. A little bit more improvement, a little bit more practice, a little bit more embodiment, and then you'll be able to live from the heart. No, I'm living from the heart right now. That's where I decide to live. I'm the creator. I choose my state of being. I choose to live from the heart. But as we've been saying here, you, the creator, also has chosen to live from the mind, from the head, all of your life prior to this. So you, the creator, have built up a lot of momentum and inertia in the mind. So that's okay. You'll have to requalify that inertia and move it down from the mind into the heart. But you're the creator. You can do that anytime you want. So if we want to escape this path of perpetual self-improvement, we just have to practice being in the heart now. Because there will be no end to it. And that has to be accepted at some point. The ego will always be able to find a way to keep you busy in self-improvement, and therefore binding you to the fact that you're a separate self. The separate self is still there behind all your improvements, isn't it? I'm improved, but I'm still a separate self that needs to be improved. You see what's being implied through the idea of improving yourself? The ego can use any spiritual practice, technically even devotion, if you have the wrong mindset about it. It can use any spiritual practice to secretly preserve its separate existence. Clever little ego, huh? So the key is to get out of the head and into the heart as much as possible, over and over and over. And this is why we say here, hey guys, just pay attention to your state of being. You should feel expanded always, in the sense of your true nature is pure expansion, pure radiance, pure shining, unlimited, infinite, eternal, perfect love, always, never changes. That's your true nature. So technically speaking, you should always feel expanded. So if you don't feel expanded, which you won't always feel expanded, right? When you feel a contraction, tune into the heart. What incorrect thought, what wrong self-perception is here now that's causing my emotional guidance system to contract my energy. My EGS, my emotional guidance system, is trying to clue me in that I've stepped out of alignment with truth in my mind. I've begun to see or think about or perceive myself in a way that is outside of love. And so you come back to the heart. I'm just pure love. That's it. I just want love. That's right. I'm just here to extend love. I forgot for a moment. That's it. It's that simple shift in perception. Nothing complex at all.